Hello everyone, my name is Sue York and I'm starting off today's NewMR presenting event by looking at trends in presenting, which hopefully will provide you with a broad overview of the trends before our later speakers delve into these topics in more detail. Thinking about trends in presenting reminded me that it's not that long ago that taking slides to a presentation meant taking actual slides or transparencies or acetates. It may have also meant carrying a projector or making sure that a special booking was in place for this piece of equipment. In many ways, the biggest trend in presenting in recent memory is the widespread move to the use of electronic presentation software and the availability of electronic paraphernalia, digital projectors, large screens, etc. to show and view these on. In terms of software, this could have been any number of packages, but for most people, the biggest trend in presenting has been the widespread adoption of PowerPoint. Presenters embraced Microsoft PowerPoint software with its bullets and builds, enthusiastically animating their quarterly sales presentations and market research debriefs. However, the glow started to fade on the relationship. People started to talk about death by PowerPoint. Many of you will have seen the 2008 YouTube hit from corporate comedian Don McMillan, Life After Death by PowerPoint. For those of you who haven't, or those wanting another hit, there is a link to this on the NewMR site. The clip is essentially one of those pieces of stand-up comedy that is funny because it's anchored in reality. Most of us will have seen at some time presenters committing some or all of these mistakes. So what are the common mistakes? People who tend to put every word they are going to say on their slides, making the slides wordy, boring, and lose the attention of their audience. Not running spell check. Excessive bullet pointing. Bad color schemes. PowerPoint made it all too easy for people with no design flair to put all manner of colors next to each other. Too many slides was another problem, as was the pointless motion animation. Another common mistake was the unclear graphic. A graphic like this may have a place in a report or appendix, but it isn't suitable for making a clear point in a presentation. Another problem with charts is what Tufte calls chart junk. Chart junk refers to all the visual components of charts or graphs that are not necessary to comprehend the information that is contained in the graphic. This could include logos, icons, and shading that's purely ornamental. Chart junk distracts the viewer from the real point of the graphic. The term Sliderman comes to us from Gar Reynolds of Presentation Zen. More on him later. A Sliderman, as you can easily guess probably, is a presentation acting as both a presentation and a reporting document. The result of which is that we end up with presentation slides that look like this. The real issue being that in the trade-off between supporting your presentation and creating a leave-behind document, we end up with something that is neither a good presentation nor a good reporting document. To improve this, you can consider creating multiple sets of slides, using the notes page to detail information, or producing a written report. All of these issues do raise the question of which trends can help us improve our presentations. Firstly, we'll look at what advice some of the key players offer. Seth Godin suggests that we don't use PowerPoint at all, that you use your own font, that you tell the truth, and that you pay by the word. He also recommends using a remote and a microphone, and that you check you bought your big idea. Try and make your presentation too breathtaking for your audience to take notes, and above all, keep it short. Tufte, who we mentioned earlier, is the father of data visualization. He believes that the audience should be provided with the maximum amount of information so they can analyze the information. Peter Harris, in our third presentation today, will explore this topic further. For those of you who've not heard of Gar Reynolds, you may have heard of Presentation Zen. Gar has written a number of books about presenting which are highly readable. And he has a blog, Presentation Zen, which offers advice on presentations, amongst other things. His focus is really on the quality of design of your presentation and focusing on your audience. The Lessig method comes from Lawrence Lessig. It's not really a method, it's the way Lessig himself likes to present. He prefers a black background with only 1 or 2 words per screen. This is a style you can adapt to suit yourself. The style tends to require more preparation or practice, but that's no bad thing. It's not for everyone, but why not try it and see how you like it? Infographics are a new way of depicting data visually. The good ones are visually appealing and engaging. Although when looking at them, it can take longer to extract the facts and figures from them. Here is a more complex infographic example from Tufte's website. As you can see, there's an enormous amount of information about Napoleon's march to Moscow. This is a graphic that would take considerable time to take in, so is more suitable for a one-slide presentation or a longer presentation where there's time for this, or for inclusion in a report. Dashboards are a new way of summarizing and presenting data. They're not really a presentation tool, although they may have a role in workshops. Ken Brewster from eTabs and Chris Morgan from Data Liberation will look at these types of options in more detail in the Europe session, which starts at 8 p.m. Sydney time tonight. Storytelling has become a hot topic. If you're interested in learning more about storytelling, there are a number of courses that you could do, and this is just an example of one that SMR are conducting later in the year. The idea behind storytelling being that the creation of a story or a narrative theme will engage your audience with your presentation. Webinars, like this one today, pose additional and different challenges when compared to face-to-face presentations. One of the key issues is that of the technology. Will it work today as you expected? You really need to consider bandwidth as well. What does that mean you can show in your presentation? Video is not always possible, and even builds within PowerPoint can sometimes be challenging. You also need to consider time delays. Not everyone who's attending the webinar will see the same slides at the same time, and builds may take longer to appear. This tends to mean you can't have presentations which are tightly scripted and rely on exact things appearing on the screen at the exact time you say them, because it simply won't happen. You need to remember that the audience can't see your body language, so you need to be communicating everything through what's on the screen and through your voice. As a presenter, you will also encounter the issue that you don't receive audience feedback while you're delivering the presentation. When presenting face-to-face, you often will take comfort from the audience nodding at what you're saying, happy when they laugh at your jokes. It can be very disconcerting to the presenter that you don't receive any feedback while you're conducting a webinar. Another issue to consider is interruptions. In a face-to-face debrief where you book a room, people will turn up and the door will be closed, and mostly you won't be interrupted. However, when people are sitting at their desks listening to webinars, quite often someone will tap them on the shoulder, just need to grab you for a minute to ask you about something. People may even interrupt themselves, checking on what email came in mid-presentation. So these are all factors to consider when preparing for a webinar. Infotainment, a topic we hear a lot when talking about presentations today. As researchers, we really have to face the challenge of how we impart information, how much information to include, and how entertaining to make the presentation. An excellent example of infotainment is An Inconvenient Truth, a documentary about climate change that won an Oscar. Prezi is another new tool for preparing presentations. I won't go into much detail about it today because we have a presentation coming up shortly that will look solely at Prezi. But if you're interested in having a look, you can see the URL on that slide. What other resources could you look at? The TED site is a fantastic site for looking at presentations that other people are doing. You can see a wide variety of really accomplished speakers with a broad range of styles and start to have a look at things that other people are doing and think about what might work for you. SlideShare is a great tool for sharing your presentations, and Wordle is a bit of fun that you might enjoy. All of this takes us to thinking about which trends should we incorporate in our own presentations. First and foremost, you should think about what is the role of the presentation. Is it a debrief where you're imparting information? Is it a workshop where you're seeking interaction between yourself and the participants? Or is it a conference presentation where people are expecting very much infotainment? Also think about your audience. How involved in the topic of the presentation are they? How senior in the organisation are they? Another important consideration is the venue. Are you in a small intimate reading room or a large conference theatre? Or perhaps you're in a webinar. You'll need to tailor your presentation accordingly. And finally, don't forget to think about the message in your presentation. If you're delivering good news or bad news, these may have impacts on how you will style your presentation. Finally, thank you very much for joining us today, and I look forward to taking your questions.